Okay, hola all, welcome back to Soul Mechanics. What you should have just seen before the opening sequence, the little intro sequence, is going to be a collection of screenshots of commentary from a video regarding this young philosopher type college student. Is his channel wherein a video wherein he speaks to a certain lecture that he had attended by, I guess, a black professor who was very, from his perspective, seemed to be racist against white people. And I listened to the lecture, so I mean, it seems that he's correct on that. However, I think that there are kind of deeper aspects to this person's lecture than meets the eye that I kind of commented on, and it seems that he's really, he speaks about, like, volleying all white people into outer space, and people ask questions like, is it to be considered ethically viable for us to subject other potential species in outer space to the colonization of white folks? I mean, it was horrendously ridiculous, but hilarious, this lecture, and especially the responses. But this student, he argued with the teacher, the professor, on it, and he recorded the lecture, which in what the professor, he states such things that as apparently the fact of the matter. I'm not sure that I believe this is the fact of the matter, but what appears to be the fact of the matter is that he does not believe in outer space. He doesn't believe that outer space is out there. He seems to be like maybe a flat earther. I'm not sure that this could be like a pretentious sort of thing. I do believe it comes across as kind of like a joke lecture, wherein it's more like a social experiment that the professor is trying to arouse certain suspicions in the students and see how they respond. But whatever the case, I did in fact go ahead and raise commentary on the merit that in fact, outer space is not to be regarded as real from our perspective, because, I mean, I can't go into outer space. Basically, this is the premise of my commentary, what I raise in this discussion, is that I cannot prove to myself that outer space exists. I can't even prove to myself that you exist. I can't prove to myself that this fucking camera is real. I can't prove to myself any of these things. There's nothing outside of my own I think, therefore I am premise that I can actually prove to be real in any measurable way. So ultimately, I think that's kind of the values that are being raised deliberately or indeliberately by this professor in this lecture, is that we actually cannot go ahead and discern something to be real or true beyond our immediate senses, because it is in fact not real or true in our immediate perception. So that's basically the context of the commentary and what we find ourselves, this little scuffle in the comments section there with this commenter that I would like to respond to specifically. I scripted this out. I wrote this out for him. So commenter guy, hopefully you're watching. I think he calls himself Aleph. I'm presuming that that's a male, that's a male name. But I wanted to respond to him directly, and I wanted to give my feedback on this, and give him everything that I could in this regard, because I think it speaks directly to the nature of reality as it stands, and it sets us up for what the following videos will likely be this weekend when I hook back up with Sweetie Cheeks regarding our old friend Anti-Ordinary, the Demi's channel Anti-Ordinary, which I should like to note that we are kind of celebrating here to some extent, that we actually did manage to elicit a response from Demi via her channel. I spoke with her on Discord, and she said some things about having challenged somebody to some debate over whether or not there are, psychic... I'm not sure exactly what her challenge was. It was something about, like, whether there is a collective consciousness and whether that, in fact, contributes to the creation of reality as we know it to some extent. Something like that. I can't really recall right now. In fact, I don't even remember what it was that the challenge specifically that had been raised. I think it was supposed to be regarding my personal theories on physics itself, which are backed heavily by the actual present case scientific understanding as we know it. Demi, should you happen to be watching this, I am sorry that I'm so late with the response to her response video, which is really, like, I didn't actually watch the whole video yet. I saw a minute of it, and I did get feedback from others who have watched it. Apparently, it's a good, like, solid 40 minutes of her obsessing yet over Staggers and Jags and their little scuffle there, which is what we had responded to with the initial High Noon video. The first High Noon video was addressing their little YouTuber feud there. And I do know that she, and at some points during her response video, suggests heavily that we were leaning towards Staggers and Jags to some extent. I should like to note, Demi, if you happen to be watching this video, that if you or anybody else that's interested is actually paying any attention to what's going on here, we do have a playlist labeled Target Assets. And those are the people that we care about. Those are the people that we're trying to enlist. Those are the people that we're hoping to be working with at some point, to some extent or another, in some fashion or another. And if you were to look at that list, you would see that you, in fact, are on it, and Staggers and Jags is not. So that should be a cue right away. Not to mention the fact that the video we made was just blatantly in your favor, and for obvious reasons, we did in fact go about kind of saving your ass there to some extent. I should like to think you might be a little, at least pretentiously grateful to some degree, but no, apparently she just obsessed over that feud and kind of talked down about me. I'm looking forward to seeing it. We'll get around to that shortly. I think I'll watch it after this, and we'll share it with Sweet Cheeks. We'll see what comes of it. But we will, in fact, make a video regarding that, because I had initially sort of challenged her, while I had raised to her the consideration that she should challenge us as regards this idea of collective consciousness and what have you, because we can, in fact, prove her wrong, and we have every intention of doing so. Demi, you're in trouble there, I imagine, especially if you spent all of that time focusing on something other than the debate at hand. You're probably in pretty deep shit in that regard. So anyways, to get to this particular random-ass commenter on somebody else's channel that is not even regarded a target asset yet, though I'm thinking I'll add him to the list, because I like him. He seems to be an up-and-comer. But, yeah, this commenter, apparently I'm personally regarding as being a little more important than responding to Demi's video at the moment. Sorry, Demi. The random commenter takes the cue here. So, I have my notes here somewhere. Now, to begin, speaking to him, dude, person, I'm gonna make a solid attempt here at doing you a solid favor. So pay attention, please, because this is costing me precious time, and my time is, in fact, in somewhat high demand, as it is used nearly exclusively to impact lasting benefits upon people, such as should be the case here, if we're successful. Now, you obviously have what we'd say like the soul or the mind of a spotter, but we will need for it to be implementing some degree of true intelligence. Of course, it might be difficult for us to discern what that actually means, being that you likely think you are already possessing of it. So, firstly, let's address some of the assumptions that you are incorrectly making in your commentary. At no point, under any circumstances, have I or would I suggest that because any given something is not to be considered real, quote-unquote, that it is thereby impossible, quote-unquote. Very little is impossible. Even nothing transpires under the correct circumstances. And this most obviously outrageous assumption is made under yet another assumption that I will have not conducted a certain activity due largely to the lacking of finances or opportunity. Now, there are a myriad of reasons as to why I would not have ever explored outer space, lowest on the list being that I may not have the cash to purchase that ticket. Topping the list would have to be that it is a fucking terrifying notion. No way. Extra very seriously unlikely that. Next up would be the entirely unreasonable but certainly understandable assumption that because you have been told something is regularly done, that it is well understood. It is understandable because being that you have stated it so confidently, it is evident that you have not actually looked into it, because had you done so, you would know that neither space nor air travel is well understood to any degree, which would become the unreasonable aspect. We have ideas as to how we think these things work, but as is the case with most everything we hold to be absolute in the scientific arena, these ideas are purely theoretical, and there are still vital pieces missing in the theories. In fact, in the case of air travel, there are pieces held in the theories that seem to be impossible, what we kind of have to jam into place in order to make the other pieces seem to fit. Space travel is another animal entirely. Before we continue, I cannot help but give the common grammatical pointers. Where you make the somewhat rude analogy of being unable to afford a ticket from Australia to America, you are missing an in there, the word in, somewhere in the sentence. Also, where you claim that beliefs exists and beliefs are real, I'm certain that you can see the mistake now. Beliefs exists doesn't work. That doesn't work. And obviously, given your standing here, or your stance on this matter, I'm fairly certain that beliefs are real is not really a claim that you would want to be making. That would place your entire paradigm in treacherous territory, so just be careful, sir or madam. From here, aside from having misspelled the word skepticism twice when I had already written it out for you beforehand, and you had even copied it back to me, I think we're wrapped up in that area for the moment. So, I mean, this comment that you place there, it's been edited, yet for what purpose I can only imagine, as these mistakes remain. So that's all along those lines. I hope it helps. So, to continue in our epic misadventure, I do apologize this is so long, but, you know, you really fucking screwed up there, man or lady. You refute the assertion that you have defined reality as being experiential. And I need to ask, are you sure about that? Because, you know, did you just deny that for the sake of argument? That would have to be the case, really, because it is, in fact, our standard definition. And it is the only definition that really works. So, yes, you have defined reality as being experiential. Perhaps you simply do not know that you have, which I can only hope elucidates some measure of the criteria under what we should like to be determining true intelligence. You very most certainly have defined reality as being experiential, just to make that clear. You are welcome. For future reference, it is a good idea to think about the things that you intend to say and make some attempt at being authentic in this regard before you go ahead and spout them out in commentary on YouTube. I mean, this is a big arena. A lot of people are going to see it, and you can very easily make an ass out of yourself that's lasting. It's, you can't erase that anymore. It's out there. In fact, here it is being represented for you. So, though it may be comfortable, it is rarely productive to be hiding things from ourselves. Trust me, I have lost things that you couldn't imagine. Anyways, now, this one I wanted to write out for you. Try to write it out on the screen. Now, you place a but where it is not only clearly uncalled for, but actually accentuates yet another inept assumption that does not even really make any sense. If something exists, then it is real, you state. By what logic we might discern that if something is real, then it exists? And were you to make such assessments, you'd be incorrect on both counts, at least by your standard, that is. There are a great many real, quote-unquote, real things that we can mutually attest do not actually exist, while at the same time I can promise you from a personal perspective, from a personal experience perspective, I can promise you that there are a great many things existing that you would very likely refuse to believe are real. And before you get around to thinking here that I am now assuming on your behalf, I am in fact presuming based upon the implications produced by the evidence is outstanding. The statements that you have made here, and especially the manner in which you have done so, make the general schematic of your understanding brazenly evident. And though it should be clearly evidenced in this response that your own discernments in fact dispute your determined understanding, it is likely that you will ignore yourself in defense of your beliefs and allow for this construct to remain determined, though a part of who you are knows that it is stifling you. This is a symptom of what we call cognitive dissonance. I'm certain you are familiar with the term, or whatever the ailment, I suppose you could say, cognitive dissonance. So I don't think it's actually regarded as an ailment so much. That is in fact what it is. It's a psychological impairment, in a manner of speaking. So from there we continue into, I didn't spell the rest of it out. I did my best on that, writing that out for you. I wanted to show you, really, I wasn't sure whether I should say it or not. It felt elegant and I wanted to read it for you and make this video, but from there we continue into him making assertions such as that only under the precedent of radical skepticism could any of my assessments be considered even coherent, I do believe he said, which obviously that's not the case, and we've just gone over why that is. In fact, it's going to be your assessments that are, you could say, legally incoherent, reasonably incoherent. Now, he actually lays a claim. He says something like, well, consider this. What if you're in the Matrix and all of your memories are false? He says something along those lines. It's going to be provided in the comments that I've shown you in the beginning of this. So that's working to my advantage in this regard. I think that we're supposed to be holding an argument here, really, but or a debate to some extent. But if you were to consider, like, I'm not sure why you raised that inquiry to begin with. Consider if you were in the Matrix and your memories were not real, or you have false memories. He might have said that all of your memories are false. That's kind of what's happening. That's the point. That's the point I'm trying to get across to you. You don't actually have an understanding, a grasp on any of the things that you think are real or justifiable. He uses the term justifiable on several occasions as regards scientific explorations, that it's scientifically justifiable, this or that, whatever he happens to be raising, and my considerations are not scientifically justifiable. Well, here's the thing. Try this experiment. Go about considering something you've never experienced, never seen, never had a first-hand perspective understanding of as being legitimately real, justifiably real and true in your perspective. See if you can't pull that off. See if you can't imagine something that, like, say, you know, a flying car, or you know, some crazy two-headed animal, which probably does exist. And the flying car, I'm certain they've got, I mean, technically we have flying cars, you just call them airplanes, but, I mean, you can go about imagining all manner of things as being real, and you can justify that in your mind as being, at the very least, a legitimate consideration to make. It's plausible, it's possible. It's a definite potentiality. And under such circumstances as considering, for example, with the flying car sort of scenario, wherein, you know, we know that the government has technologies, highly advanced technologies that we're unaware of, the public is not made aware of. If you keep that in mind, you can go ahead and justify the consideration of making all manner of things as being real. UFOs and space aliens and all kinds of shit. I mean, you do this all the time. You're constantly doing this. And the fact of the matter is that you don't have a grasp on many of the things that you consider to be true or real. You do not have first-hand experience, but you take somebody else's word for it. And this, in effect, ultimately adds up to what really amounts to kind of like a ghost haunting you, as we've said before in earlier videos. It's your perception being haunted by ghosts from the past or even ghosts from the future. It's just... It's a perceptual blooper wherein we consider things to be absolutely certain because so many other people have told us so, but you haven't experienced it yourself. I'd like to raise a different consideration than the Matrix thing wherein you have false memories, which again is basically what's happening, because everything that you've never experienced that you consider to be real, that's a hallucination. That's you making shit up. You're pretending to understand something that you do not absolutely know. And yes, in that, under that context, you are in fact taking it on faith. You are having faith that a thing exists beyond your immediate perception. And that faith is what holds up the construct in your perception, in your understanding, in your determinable cognition, your field of cognition. This thing exists insofar as regards your imagining of it, but under no other circumstances, in no other context does this thing actually exist in the real world, because the real world is simply what you are defining it as. And yes, you're either defining reality as being first-hand experience, or you're defining reality as being imaginary. There's no two ways about it. So I'd like to raise a second consideration for you, commenter guy, to take into account, is consider it more along the lines of the Truman Show, wherein you think that the world is something that is, you thoroughly believe in the world as being something that's hard set in stone, that's been identified in some way or another. Yet, outside the confines of this studio world that you live in, it may very well be something entirely different. That outside the confines of your immediate accessible cognition, you don't know. You don't know. And there's no way that you can prove that I'm real. There's no way that I can prove that you're real beyond we have a mutually beneficial faith-based arrangement that says, yes, we're in a debate, we're raising an argument to each other, we're both real insofar as regards that context, what we have defined as being such. But we don't know that. It's taken on faith. Hopefully it's taken on faith by you, at least, because I have faith that you exist. But beyond that, I can't prove it. It's not scientifically determinable. And yes, he actually raises the consideration wherein he says, well, under this context, or with this paradigm in play, you can't prove that you even have senses. You can't rely on the idea that even your senses are valid, because you may very well not have senses. The idea, the very concept that you have senses at all to be making use of might be false. Yes, that's the point. That's precisely the point. Yes. You have no idea. And this is where we're getting close to approaching the boundary, as we've called it before, wherein it's not really an approachable concept. The construct kind of fades into nothingness here. It begins to reflect us eternally and comes to a point where we can't really get to the edge. But at this point where you begin to consider that factor, yes, there is nothing that you can even so much as perceive that allots for you to consider anything as being truly tangible. And this will continue to repeat itself into eternity. That, in fact, is what eternity is. That's the construct of eternity as it stands. So, yeah, that's it. That's where I'm taking us in this regard. I'm trying to show you that there is a kind of an illusory factor in play here as regards your very determination of reality. It's very, there's a bit of a mystery there, that something not quite right about it, but it slips by all of us. It's just this determination of what is real and what we consider to be true. It slips right by us without us noticing that there is nothing tangible or even considerable about it in any, traditionally realistic way. But I think that's kind of what was raised in this lecture, ultimately, beyond this argument. I think that this professor was raising that suspicion. He was attempting to elicit that suspicion in the students that, that this may not be real, but instead they took it and ran with that ball in the other direction, wherein some of them even questioned, well, what if there are space aliens out there, and is it ethically viable for us to subject space alien extraterrestrial life to white person colonization? Like, you guys are buying into this whole social justice warrior thing so deeply. You guys, just like as regards what we're going to get around to with Demi and her video, you guys need to have a bit of a fucking sense of humor, because we're in for some shit that you're just not going to handle. You're just not going to be able to manage appropriately. in the coming years or so, in the relatively immediate future, there's going to be some heavy changes being made to our very understanding of the nature, reality of physics, of all of it, that people like this guy and Demi, you're going to crack under the pressure of that alteration. There's going to be some really seriously damaging things going down as regards the understanding that we've held for such a long while. And I guess I'm not just trying to be a dick here and like prove people wrong about things. I'm hopefully helping to prepare you guys for that, because we really do want for all of you to be prepped and ready and aboard on this venture into the great unknown. So I think that's going to be about it for this video. Thank you all for watching. We'll get back to you on updates for Demi's video. Maybe. I think I might have something else in mind before then, but regardless, whatever the case, on Saturday we will get down to responding to Demi directly. So that's it. Thank you all for watching. Kila Salai, Teriyuni Siari. Namaste. Okay, so brief post-clip revisionary edition. Something I had forgotten to say in the video, and something I'd like to add after having reviewed the video. Firstly, good morning all. It's a very early morning. The sun just came up. I'm getting ready for work, so I'm not altogether tuned in just yet. Bear with me. I felt I needed to get this done before it was too late. Too many people had seen the original video. Another day had passed by. I wanted to get this reposted. So, the commenter, he makes a suggestion, Aleph, he makes a suggestion in his comments, which I'm not really sure how this fits, but it does play. We'll make use of it. We'll run with it. He says, or he suggests at one point, that in the context of an understanding wherein reality or truth cannot be determined outside of your immediate experience, he suggests, Donald Trump hasn't met you, therefore you don't exist. Now that doesn't work, and there are various reasons, but I'm going to go ahead with the most glaringly obvious reason. Firstly, Donald Trump is not you or me. And as regards this discussion, it's going to be you and I communicating here, like that we're the only two realities to be taken into consideration as regards this particular discussion. And Donald Trump is not you. Donald Trump, technically speaking, I mean, technically Donald Trump is you and I, but that's neither here nor there. But no, Donald Trump is not you, Donald Trump is not me. Therefore, were Donald Trump to never have met you or I, that would thereby suggest that Donald Trump doesn't exist, not us. See, because insofar as regards the premise of I think, therefore I am, really only you and I here can prove that we're existing to any feasible capacity. However, as you had stated with the suggestion that you can't even trust that your senses are real, therefore, like, even your senses might be false, you might not even have these senses, that proves my point, ultimately. Like, that hammers it home in and of itself. So, I mean, yeah, even the I think, therefore I am, is not really justifiable in this regard, and that's the reality. You presented that. You said it yourself. That's what it is. Yes. That's really the point here, and I understand that it's difficult to accept, to acknowledge, but it is the case, and you're going to want to. You're really going to want to. B, as regards to the Donald Trump thing, firstly, I'm not sure why you would go ahead and decide to use Donald Trump specifically as an exemplary candidate for this suggestion here. That does, in fact, say a lot about you as a person. That's a pretty telling cue. That's a tell. You kind of want to, as I stated before, with the, potentially making an ass of yourself on YouTube, you do want to kind of try to keep your poker face on. That suggestion, making use of Donald Trump particularly, that's somewhat revealing about you as a person. We won't get into that, though. It's personal business. However, I should like to note that Donald Trump, in fact, has met me, and I personally still do not believe that man is real by any measure. So there's that. But as regards the consideration of implementing true intelligence, or what we'll refer to as being lucidity, it's the same as having a dream. This world as we know it, and what we're learning via such investigations into quantum mechanics and such explorations as quantum mechanics, and the information that we're getting from the vanguard of quantum mechanics, of course, we're taking this on faith. We're taking this for granted, because they're telling us that objects aren't even really solid, and that they're not even, for that matter, even really there. Like, when we look for an object, it pops up. And it's just like a dream, or even you could use a simulation theory if you wanted to, and say it's like a computer system, but whatever the case, it is not technically real by the standard definition, ultimately speaking, and, this is, even thereby, we can take that into consideration, that things do not seem to be real from these investigations, but at the same time, the investigations, the information we're getting from the vanguard in quantum mechanics, we cannot prove. I can't see subatomic particles. I can't prove to myself that any of that shit is real. I can't go on the internet, and even see like an actual depiction of it. It's all going to be CGI shit. And thereby, after having seen the CGI shit, were they to show me real images of this thing, I couldn't prove to myself, I couldn't absolutely believe that it was real and not CGI. See what I'm saying? Much of what we know, insofar as regards education, specifically or particularly public education and scientific endeavors, it is not actually known. It's presented as known, and we take it for granted, but these things, they change all the time. Like the very textbook presentations for educational parameters or for educational institutions change, like even year to year. Science will come back with information proving that things that we considered to be absolutely certain the year before are now entirely different. And this happens all the time, and it's going to begin happening at a rapid rate. Things are going to be changing dramatically. And ultimately, as I was saying about implementing true intelligence or achieving lucidity, you really do want to try to get to the point where you are of the understanding, the objective understanding, that you do not know. Because we don't know. And much of what is presented as known in any educational institution or throughout the entirety of the world, really, is pretty much going to be half-measure theoretical suggestions, theoretical considerations, a half-measure logical guesswork. And we have utilities, we have tools that can, measure things to some degree and give us a sort of information that we can use to determine assessments as regards what we think a thing is, what we think is happening, but we think that we don't know for certain. Even at their level, in their immediate experience, the people researching, experimenting, they cannot know for certain. And we have to take their word on faith. You see, that if you dig into anything, really dig into it, you're going to find that we don't know a fucking thing. Humanity as a whole, and specifically you or I, do not know a fucking thing for certain. There is no real or true. This world is very much just like another level of dream state. And in order to become lucid, you have to know that you're dreaming. So that's really, I think that's the best I can do for now. Thank you all again for watching. Kila Salai, Tiriyuni Siari. Namaste.